Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 18, Chapter 12, and it seems like we'll get 19. We're going to do a leapfrog. I think this will be the first time we're actually going to go from one volume to the other, and that's because I couldn't finish all of 18 last week, but that works out because I think this last chapter and the first chapter of the next volume actually go together very well. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to only cover those two chapters because there's a lot. There's a lot of little tidbits being thrown in here that I really badly want to talk about. But yes, as per usual, thank you everybody that dropped by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday after Mushoku Monday. And yeah, as per usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel through kind words, hitting the like button. We had a single dislike last week, and it didn't even start yet. So I'm assuming there's like Julie haters out there. So let's offset that by hitting the like button on the previous video when you get a chance. But that was like, who doesn't like Julie? Again, I think it's just that one person that doesn't like the fact that I'm doing Mushoku Mondays. They don't like Mushoku Tensei, so they dislike every single one of them before it even starts. But anyways, yes, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships. That stuff, it means a great deal to me. You guys are just so fantastic. Last week, we had during the Mushoku Monday, we had Philip did another membership, Sabanasu with another membership, Noah with a big, massive super. Thank you so much, Noah. Gosh, thank you. I cannot express enough how much that means to me. And then Kusha with another super, and Sergio with a super. So thank you guys so much for your support. But with all that said, let's just jump right into it. Hopefully I don't forget to do my tier listing for volume 18 before going to 19, but we'll see. But I gotta wait until I finish it. So let's get started with it. Chapter 12, The Next Battle. Rudius woke to the goddess sleeping next to him. Most would call her Roxy. Beside her was a tiny baby with similarly blue hair. As a child of a human and a god, this baby was Perseus. Just kidding, this was their daughter, Lada. Leo the Sacred Beast was curled up on the floor beside the bed. Ever since they got official approval from the Beast Folk, he seemed to be much more smug than usual. Or maybe that was due to the fact that Linnea and Presena were acting subservient to him. It did seem odd that Leo was so attached to Lada from the beginning, but he never dreamed that it would be because she was a savior. That was a startling revelation for sure. It was hard to believe their little girl was that special. That's kind of the oddity there because like with the whole situation with the Beast Folk and that reveal, like the entire time I'm reading that whole segment, I'm like, why isn't Rudy like a little bit questioning this? Like he's just kind of like, oh, so she's savior. All right, cool. What else? Oh yeah, we need to pick somebody. It's like he just rolls with it. I'm like, as a father, that seems like a really big reveal. You would think his mind would be going, holy crap, what am I going to do? How do I prepare? The only thing he brought up was like, maybe I should teach her some jujitsu before she, once she grows up. It's like, it's sometimes it's like your disconnection as acting like a father and be protective is so weird sometimes. Now it kind of makes sense because now he's sitting there and he's able to see her, and maybe now it's finally kind of hitting him. As proud as it made him as a father, he would have to do his best not to make it show. Showing favoritism wasn't good, and he didn't want to put a sad look on Lucy's face. Again, there it just kind of shifts to a comedic thing like, I'm so proud. I better not make it, just make it show. It's weird. As Roxy woke, groggily sitting up and rubbing her eyes, her chest was exposed. He couldn't help but ogling them, fearing such action of blasphemy would leave him blinded. Huh? Why is Lada here? Did you bring her in here, Rudy? Don't you remember bringing her in here last night yourself? Or I did? After they had a little romp in the bed and fell asleep, Lada began crying in the middle of the night. A rather rare event. There's a couple little moments in here where I'm like, we're already starting to kind of hint at something with Lada. Roxy attended to her before bringing her back to the bed to rock her to sleep, only to fall asleep herself. With that said, Rudy decided to leave for his morning training. Roxy opted to sleep in with Lada as it was her day off. Now, when I first started reading this and it's like, why is she here? I'm like, wait, did Lada like talk to the Sacred Beast and have the Sacred Beast bring her up to the bed because she wanted to sleep in there with them? But yeah, it's like let's remember that they're pointing out that this is a very rare event. They've already kind of pointed out that Lada sort of acts similar to what Rudius was acting, which was an oddity to people like Lilia. Like, why isn't this baby crying? It seems very odd. Stopping by Sylphie's door, he peeked in to find her and Lucy still asleep. They had given Lucy her own bedroom, but she slept with Sylphie at night. While it would be nice to sleep together with the two, his libido was too strong, so he couldn't help himself and couldn't do something like that in front of Lucy, especially since she was old enough to remember. Peeking in on Eris's room, he assumed that she was already up, but he found a silhouette on the bed. There was a girl, holding her hands over her ears as her body trembled. Her breasts were enormous, but she didn't have red hair. Those ears she was holding onto were dog ears. Plus, she also had a tail. Her eyes were full of tears. "Oh, boss. Morning." After arriving in Soraya, Eris was extremely happy to see Priscilla. She licked her chops and said, "That's an incredibly cute girl you brought back with you." While Linnea shuddered when she seen Eris's reaction, Priscilla puffed out her chest and grinned proudly. "See how great I am? Boss's wife only had to take one look at me before deciding she likes me." This caused Linnea to grin mischievously before egging on Priscilla. "Yeah, it's sure incredible, yeah. Only you could win over favor of the Berserker Sword King that quickly, nya. It's too bad. I wish I could be as lucky as you, nya." Priscilla wagged her tail as she approached Eris, who promptly scratched the back of her ears and complimented her tail. The amount of touching was intense for a first encounter, but perhaps because Priscilla was a dog type, she simply wagged her tail and said, "Oh, I really am wicked. My charms are so overwhelming. I even captivated the boss's woman." As Priscilla shot Rudius a glance, he could only force a smile. Normally he would have found her attitude annoying, but he knew where this is going. Eris then spoke up. "You must be lonely, sleeping by yourself now that you're back. I'd be happy to sleep with you on occasion." "At this rate, it'll only be a matter of time before I climb my way back to the top," Priscilla said. She didn't even notice Linnea snickering at her. Priscilla soon discovered for herself the bone-breaking power of Eris's embrace, which was precisely why she ended up in this current state. As Priscilla groaned about her chest hurting, Rudius used healing magic on her. Her breasts were as voluptuous as he remembered. He'd already spent a passionate night with Roxy, so he was more than sated for the moment. After Priscilla muttered a thanks, he left the house with a wooden sword in hand. Eris stood just outside the door, arms crossed, and her stance was wide. Her stomach was noticeably swollen due to her pregnancy, but she still looked like the most intimidating guard. She seemed to be in good spirits. He could tell by the look on her face. Apparently she deeply enjoyed cuddling Priscilla throughout the night. Currently, Priscilla and Linnea lived close to their mercenary headquarters. They shared an apartment, much like the one Cliff lived in. The fact that they could cohabitate like that was proof of their good relationship. And that was the case with the dorms. They shared a dorm room. They took turns coming over every night to check on Leo. They were caretakers in name only. But Rudius was pleased not to have them living with him. I thought that was going to be the case, but I guess that makes sense. Eris would alternate between the two, periodically summoning someone to her room to act as a pillow. Every time one would be dragged to the room, they'd shoot pleading looks at Rudius. It honestly made Rudius jealous, wanting her to call him instead. But perhaps she'd be more open to affections once she had given birth. I think she's literally just using them as pillows. She knows that she can't, get with Rudius. She's already expressed that before. We can't do that. So it makes sense. So what are you up to? I was thinking about our baby's name. I say he needs a valiant one. A valiant name? Rudius stroked his chin. I guess that might be a good idea if we're having a boy. I was thinking Ars, Aldebaran, or Kalman. I think those are a little bit too valiant. She just named off a bunch of famous heroes from the past. They were good names, but Rudius feared that they might get bullied for having such old-fashioned names. What do you think of Rudius? I've been thinking of girls' names, like Alice, Fran. I think a beautiful, refined one might fit best. You gonna give our son a girl's name? She tilted her head, genuinely puzzled. I just think that if you end up with a girl, it'd be pretty sad to give her a male name. Because we haven't thought of any alternatives. It's definitely gotta be a boy. She sniffed at him and turned away. Just to appease her, he would probably have to come up with neutral names in case, like Maki or Karu. Well, those weren't recognized names here. Yeah, those are technically very neutral names in Japan. Well, I'm gonna get some running in, so I'll catch you later. All right, see you later. Now 6 months pregnant, she recently stopped practicing her sword. He wasn't sure if she was finally conscious of the baby now, or pure instincts told her to stop. She didn't seem like a mother at all, but she was going to have this child anyways. After his jog, the family gathered for breakfast. Yeah, I think this kind of goes into my continued discussion that I've had where it's like, I don't think he gives certain people enough credit. I know they're going with the idea of Eris being the tomboy, the tough and gruffy, the husband, basically. But it's still like that aspect of like, still kind of respect that aspect that she's willing to finally stop. Now, yes, the idea of if it's like conscious of it or instincts, again, my mind still goes to the idea that I think Rudius is reading Eris wrong. I think everybody is reading her wrong. My theory is that she is completely conscious of the baby, and she's always been conscious of the baby. I think she just knows that she's okay. I think there is a side of it that might be that she just kind of knows her body more than people give her credit for, and that she understands what she's doing. Or, like I said, there could be an aspect that she's so, like, good with her battle aura that she's able to use the battle aura to protect the baby. Because, like, I mean, have we had any instance where we talked about a warrior conceiving a baby and if they could possibly control their battle aura to protect the child as they're training? We don't know. She might actually know that. But yes, you can also chop it up as the idea that she's just kind of childish and doesn't really know what she's doing, and she put her baby at risk. After his jog, the family gathered for breakfast. The table was getting too small for their attendance anymore. Nora may move out before Lada got old enough to take the spot, which made him wonder what her plans were once she graduated. Aisha seemed likely to stay there, even after she reached adulthood. Norn? Yes, what is it, big brother? What are you planning to do once you graduate? Norn stared blankly. I haven't really given any thought about it. Oh, okay. She was still a minor, and only 5th year. With her work as student council president, maybe it was only natural that she hadn't given much thought. Big brother? Yes? If, that is, hypothetically speaking, I were to say that I wanted to become an adventurer, would you oppose it? She was decent enough with the blade, and after 5 years of training, her magic abilities had grown. She'd probably make a fine adventurer. He only guessed that she'd come to idolize them after hearing about Paul and his adventures. That didn't mean he wasn't worried. This was Norn after all. She might do something clumsy and die on the spot. Due to her adorable looks, men would swarm on her if she became an adventurer. He couldn't help but imagine the worst, due to his work involving aiding adventurers caught in sticky situations. I wouldn't oppose it, but I would worry. Do you really want to become an adventurer? She shook her head. No, not particularly. The thought just popped in my head. He wondered if she was downplaying the truth. Once she graduated, she could surely find steady work that paid better than adventuring. Perhaps she was looking for something besides money. Still, he wanted to respect the decision that she made as much as he could. After Norn finished her meal, she left for the university. Despite school being off, she had duties as a student council. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, hold on, Andrew, let me get everybody else's opinion here. Aisha spoke up. Personally, I'd be opposed to it. I don't see any way that she could hack it as an adventure. Sylphie chimed in. I think you should let her do whatever she wants to do. It's a big thing to come up with a dream of yourself. Lilia replied. I also oppose it. Miss Norn is master and mistress's precious daughter. She should marry into an appropriately respectable family and live a secure, peaceful life. Eris shrugged. I say to let her do it. Her swordsmanship is still lacking, but being an adventurer is fun. Everyone suddenly weighed in once she was gone. Of course, it was just idle discussion, as it wasn't something they could decide via family meeting. Roxy then spoke up. You could become an adventurer anywhere in the world. Even if we all oppose it, she could just run off and become one without saying a word to us if she wanted to. Roxy's words had real weight, since they were spoken from experience. Yeah. They've never really kind of got into exactly the situation of her leaving. I mean, we did have the whole chapter of Roxy's homecoming, and it did get into the idea that she did leave home because she felt isolated. She couldn't communicate like everybody else could, so she left. And she also felt like she was a burden to her parents. So, but it never got into the idea of what transpired there. And obviously, she did have, dreams of being an adventurer and everything like that. So she quickly became an adventurer, and she rose up in the ranks. But yeah, technically, compared to everybody else, like, again, Sylphie never became an adventurer. Aisha never became an adventurer. Lilia never became an adventurer. Eris became an adventurer, a part of the Adventure Guild, but that's because she was traveling with Rudius and Regerd, and for the most part, it was just kind of a means along the path there. But again, Roxy does technically fit the situation with Norn the most, and the idea that, yeah, she might feel like she's still at a place, and again, she has those dreams, just like Roxy had those dreams of going out there in the world, and so they kind of had the same path there. And what did Roxy do? She just left home. And she feels like if Norn wants to do it, she's going to do the same thing. But again, like Rudius says, it's just everybody chiming in to give their opinion of the situation. And again, I understand what everybody's saying there. I think, Sylphie supporting her, whatever she wants to do. Aisha just not really feeling like her sister is going to be good enough to do something like that. There could be an aspect in there that she's fearful for her sister. You never know. Lilia, again, is going to oppose it because that's literally my original master. That's his daughter. But yeah, when the question came up as to what Norn would do in the future, that is a big, massive question mark. And yeah, early moments, it was always, the assumption was going to always be the idea of her wanting to become an adventurer. She idolized Paul so much because a huge chunk of her earliest memories was literally being alone with her father. And her father was the only rock that she had. She was constantly going to unknown places. She was getting sick. He was constantly having to take care of her. He literally was her whole life at that moment. And he was this beacon of hope. He was strong. He was brave. He was working so hard to find his family. She was living in the shadow of a hero, basically. So it makes sense that she always wanted to become an adventurer. She wanted to be just like her father. She wanted to get stronger. And yeah, she didn't have seemingly, it always showed that she didn't have the knack for it. even after training her for 5 years, it doesn't seem like she's a great... It implies that she would be a good adventurer, but not that she's going to be like a standout or anything like that. She's not like an Eris back in those days. But yeah, there was always the assumption that because she was sort of following in the footsteps of Ariel, that she... Yeah, like he says, there's probably some really good opportunities for her. They sort of implied, I believe, at some point that the reason that Ariel took the student council, not implied, they literally said it. The reason that Ariel took the student council is because it would get the attention of the bigwigs. Because it was like a position of power. Like it was a position that shows that you have what it takes. It's a good sign that you could be something incredible in the future. So Ariel wanted that position so that she can get in there and talk to the Magician's Guild and everything like that. So yeah, technically with her getting in the student council president position as well, she has opportunities to get in probably in somewhere political that can pay a lot of money. Again, we're implying here that unless you're an S rank that's just taking out some big jobs, you're not getting paid a whole bunch of money being an adventurer. So if she, but again, he kind of points out, it could be that she doesn't care about money, so that it's not like something that appeals to her, but it would give her a peaceful and fulfilling life in a lot of people's eyes. A peaceful, fulfilling life that she has plenty of money on the table, she's able to take care of herself and do whatever she wants at that point. But would she want to chop it all up and just go be an adventurer? That's a very interesting question. I don't see her being able to pull that off, but it would be an interesting direction for her to take because that kind of goes back to my original thought that what she was going to be. But I thought but my assumption was that she grew out of that. It seems like that's something that's always been there, and that could be because every time she thinks of her father, she thinks about that. And the father's sword's literally sitting in her room. Every time she looks at it, she thinks about, oh, that's right. That was the dream that I had. Maybe she still wants to do it because every time she looks at that sword or thinks about her father, she goes, yeah, I kind of still want to do that thing. I still want to follow in his footsteps. But I also agree with Rudius in the idea that, like, she's going to literally be Zenith. She's going to become an adventurer. She's going to have all these guys after her. She's literally going to be Zenith. Afterwards, Rudius accompanied Aisha and Persena to their mercenary headquarters. Persena's work consisted of assisting Linnea, which made her like a secretary. She took the title of Assistant Vice Chief. As Persena entered, Rudius warned her not to do anything wicked and to work hard. Aisha then handed him a list of all their members. There was about 50, and she marked out which ones were particularly good at paperwork. Rudius planned to show this list to Orsted, so he could select which one had the lowest chance of being one of the Man God's apostles. Rudius would then interview that candidate, and if they were serious enough, he'd appoint them to help out with office administration and document filing. If that's what you need, would it be better just to employ me instead? Aisha offered. I want you to look after the mercenary band. He knew that she'd do phenomenal work, but he didn't want to risk her glimpsing Orsted. The curse would turn her against Orsted, and would make her oppose Rudius working with him. Aisha normally spent days idly, but she could produce results almost instantaneously if she put her mind to it. By the time Rudius had caught on to what was happening, she'd already have Orsted drowning in the bottom of the ocean. That's how he played it out in his mind anyways. He knew that it was just exaggerating his concern. I can see Aisha concocting a plan. Like, I can see the Man God, like, totally wanting to use Aisha. Like, she's the perfect tool, but she's got this cloud around her that I can't manipulate. She would be the perfect pawn for me. But now there's a side of me that wonders if Aisha would be so clever that she could overcome it. Like, that was the whole thing with Ariel. Again, they pretty much point out that Ariel was, I guess, trained in a way that she can compose herself in front of Orsted. Like, he still feared Orsted, but she was able to control herself. But the oddity was always the idea that she wasn't affected by the curse, which everybody else makes them not trust Orsted. He is my enemy. Ariel never seen that, which was odd, because it seems like it's supposed to be sort of a magic, an effect, a curse. Why would that not affect her despite the fact that she has some sort of training? How can a training overcome a curse? So my thought was always that there's still something else in there they just don't know about that goes along with the idea of the charm. And yes, it could be in the whole idea that, like with Rudius not being affected by the Man God, could be the same case with her not being affected by Orsted, which again, they kind of implied her not being affected by the Man God as well. So it could still be that aspect. But there's a side of me that almost thinks that Aisha could be a similar case if it's not a sort of, way of preventing the curse from affecting them, that Aisha herself can overcome it as well, just by her cunning nature. Because she's so clever and a genius, I wonder if she could overcome the logic, the illogicalness of the curse itself. It would be really interesting. Rudius then went straight to Orsted to report the last month, such as how he appointed Linnea and Persena to head his mercenary band, along with Aisha acting as their assistant. Orsted expressed no opposition to his choices. At this point when I was reading this right here, I'm like, Wait, no. What? Like I said, I went straight to Orsted and report the last month. I told him about the band and Linear. I'm like, that's a lot. There's this whole thing with a sacred beast and Lotta. Is that not the most important thing to get through? He talks about it though.
Such a thing never existed in my past loops. Go ahead and continue doing what you're doing.
Orsted seemed amused by the going-ons. He also gave permission to hire people to work at his office, selecting acceptable candidates from the list. Maybe he was actually excited about it all. Again, I think it is that nicety that things are different. Like him saying that this never existed in my previous loops. I think, yeah, there's an idea there that he's excited, like, finally something's different. It feels different. He mentioned that with the whole thing with bringing Lucy. It's super cute. Are you sure Linnea and Priscilla are fine the way they are, though? It's not going to have too much impact on the way that things play out in the future, is it?
As long as one of them becomes the matriarch in the end, it will have no big impact on the future. Most people who become involved with you have their destinies dramatically changed in the process. Therefore, I am unable to say anything with any certainty.
Yeah, that technically is finally acknowledging the idea that despite the fact of seeing everything set in stone, like, oh no, that Laplace comes later. No, it can't be your child. And it's like, but you are acknowledging that things are significantly different, right? He's finally acknowledging, yeah, everything that comes involved with you, things are changing drastically. So we're finally acknowledging that, yeah, it's not going to play out the way you think it. But again, it does technically play into the idea that why they would see that is, one, it's so ingrained in his head that this always happens. But additionally, there's the destinies thing. And yeah, it could be an aspect that, and they're confirming it here, either Linnea or Priscilla, one of the two of them has to become the matriarch. Now, it's interesting. One of them, is that implying that no matter which one becomes the matriarch, the end result is the same? Or is it more so that in his previous loops, he's experienced both of them at some point becoming matriarch? Like, he's seeing where Linnea does, and he's seen where Priscilla does. But it also implies the idea that why the two of them, no matter which one, has the same result. That seems odd. You would think that depending on which one is in position would drastically change the future of the Beast Folk, basically. That would be the assumption there. Maybe it's just simply because if neither one of them do, somebody else does, and that's not the good thing. Or because they're so similar, they're just going to take it down the same path. They're so similar to each other that the end result's going to be the same, which kind of gives credit to how close they are, that they'll both do the same thing. But wouldn't you think that if Priscilla becomes the matriarch, they'll have food shortages, and thus that would greatly impact the Beast Folk? But while if Linnea was, she might lead them down destruction. I can see both sides. Anyway, I never dreamed my daughter would become some kind of savior. Did you already know about that, sir?
No. A different man has always been the Sacred Beast's partner in the past.
That was only natural. Lada didn't exist in the other loops, after all. Yeah, that was like, that was like my immediate response in my head was like, no, she's not there. Like, she's literally not there. Unless Rudius is asking, did you know about that based on the idea of possibly Orsted, upon knowing about... Again, because they've sort of implied the idea that he brought Lada to Orsted because he said Orsted said something to the effect that there was some sort of potential in her or something like that. So maybe that's what he's talking about.
But, judging by what you told me, it seems clear the man god made a concerted effort to keep you and Roxy apart. So I suspect she had a strong destiny.
Yeah, I guess that would probably be why Orsted would say that she had some sort of potential or something like that, because she survived through that, which implies that she has a strong destiny. So that could be why that's why he probably came to that conclusion. It seemed Lada knocked someone off their rightful place and took the seat for herself. By the way, about the guy who was originally supposed to be the savior, what was he set out to accomplish? This is another one of those like casual drops, like WTF, wait, hold on. Let's stop right here. Why was this not brought up before?
He was the man who would eventually go out to defeat Demon God Laplace.
There finally answers. My gosh, where do we start? Just from this one. I love Orsted and how it's like a single sentence. It's like, okay, guys, you ready? Let's talk for 20 minutes. That's literally Mushoku Mondays. Every time Orsted talks, let's talk. That would explain Pedagoose's response. That would explain his response to the Sacred Beast. Now, I'm of two minds here. Again, when Rudius went to Pedagoose with the Sacred Beast, Pedagoose looked at the Sacred Beast and there was like he gave a face, like something was not right. He had some dislike for seeing him or something like that. It sort of implied the idea that my assumption at that point was that he knew the person that had the Sacred Beast, or he was involved with the Sacred Beast at some point and watched it die, and maybe it's just it's dredging up bad memories. So I'm of two minds now, where one is, what if Petagus was the previous savior that was traveling with the Sacred Beast? Because this sort of implies, okay, plain and simple, obviously the Sacred Beast is there in order to stop some sort of catastrophe to the world. So it shows up every now and then, and in the future, when it grows up, it will go along with the savior to stop something, some catastrophe from harming the world. And so, yeah, it could have been Petagus himself that at some point met the Sacred Beast, and the Sacred Beast traveled with him in order to fight Laplace the first time. And maybe the Sacred Beast at that point died. And now that Laplace is coming back again, suddenly the Sacred Beast shows back up, and it's time to fight Laplace again. Or it could simply be that, yes, Petagus met the Savior previously, and maybe it never had anything to do with Laplace at the time, but it could have been. But, I wonder if Petagus knows that Petagus knows that the Sacred Beast is now here, and is now with Rudius, and knows that the Sacred Beast will go after Laplace eventually. That's the big massive question mark there. Because my assumption around essentially the multiple worlds and the Dragonfolk world and the Beastfolk world and everything like that is that, yes, at some point as the destruction was coming across all the different worlds and they were being destroyed and taken out and they all eventually came to this planet, that yes, the Beastfolk would have probably fled to this world, and that the idea of the sacred tree was probably something they brought over with them and planted in this world, and it's still sort of a beacon that is supposed to protect the new world they're in. So it's sort of kind of placing it as sort of being this beacon, like this alarm, that tells them that something is happening in this world that's going to cause problems. Go out there and stop it. So I can see Laplace coming across the world and taking everything out as being something that the Sacred Beast would be created in order to stop. So again, it could easily have been something that Petagus was involved with at that time. Which has me thinking, will Lada be the first demon to enter Petagus' fortress and be... Or, okay, demons have entered the Petagus' fortress. I mean, that whole thing happened with Etoph. They have entered. Okay, allowed to be entering Petagus' fortress. I wonder if Petagus knows that that's what the Sacred Beast is going to be after. I wonder if he's seen the Sacred Beast and said... No, correction. I don't think him seeing the Sacred Beast, he'd immediately go, oh, Laplace is coming back. Because I think he would have responded to that much more positively. Oh, you're here. It's time. It's time. It's going to finally happen. You're here. That means Laplace is coming back, right? Which that does make me think that the previous Sacred Beast was not involved with the defeat of Laplace before. Because he might make that tie-in if he sees the Sacred Beast again and goes, is it time again? You're back. Let's do this. So yeah, my mind's going a million directions right now. Thank you, Orsted, for causing my mind to go a million directions. But yeah, that's very interesting that Lada, it's implying that based on the previous loops, that Lada is going to go defeat Demon God Laplace. That does answer my question as to what their goal is, and I was suspecting that it would be the Man God. That Lada was supposed to go with the Sacred Beast, and yes, with Orsted or whatever, to go defeat the Man God. That Man God is going to be the threat on the world itself. But this is implying that it is Demon God Laplace. But again, I'm still thinking that is a good sign that at some point, I mean, I wonder if Rudius will eventually tell Petagus. And I don't know if they've told Petagus about the fact that Orsted is looping yet, or if Orsted has told Petagus that. I doubt it, because it took too long for Rudius for him to tell Rudius. And it doesn't seem like Petagus and Orsted are like on good terms. It doesn't seem like they like each other too much. So I don't know that Orsted would trust him with that information, but I'd be curious if Rudius at some point will slip that out to Petagus. Hey, look, my daughter apparently is supposed to fight Laplace. So do you want to meet her? Do you want to become buddies or whatever? And hopefully you don't make her kill my next son that's coming out or whatever. Anyways, I think I got everything out of my system with that. We'll see. There's too much information to get out. Oh, okay. Are you sure everything's going to be all right since he's not going to be the savior, though?
It doesn't matter. Laplace is someone I will have to kill anyways.
Again, that I hate every time he opens his mouth. I can't stop talking. Okay, so he's saying, like, no matter what, I'm going to be fighting him. So I guess that implies the idea that the man that is going to go defeat Laplace is the savior with the Sacred Beast, and that I will have to kill Laplace anyways. Again, that goes to my theory that Laplace was directly connected to the Man God. God, that was like some crazy theories I was making back there. I would have to go dig that stuff back up. This is the only thing, that's the only thing I hate, is whenever I make like some crazy theory strings, I don't write it all down. My crazy theory strings, I don't always write down. So it's like, I don't remember half of what I say. I did have that whole theory of the splitting and how it kind of created these two beings, one that hated man and one that hated God. It was interesting. I need to put all that together so I can make like an entire video of my current theories. I can never seem to have time to do it.
It doesn't matter. Laplace is someone I will have to kill anyways. It is true that I owe the Sacred Beast and his partner for what they did for me, but they aren't truly necessary pieces on the board.
That's sort of implying the idea that, yeah, they helped me in the past. Like, in previous loops, these two have helped me, and I owe them for that, but they're not necessary. Like, I'll handle it myself. Like, it almost feels like it's like, that's not even just a nothing. It's not necessary. Which, again, does go back to my theory, the idea of Orsted dying, and it making the Sacred Beast and Lada purposeful again, or something like that. Ruiz's understanding was that Orsted fought Laplace numerous times throughout his loops, and the so-called savior had been a staunch ally each time. However, Laplace wasn't so formidable that he needed an ally to win. Yeah, it sort of does imply that Laplace isn't that big of a deal, but again, he is technically Dragonkins or Dragonfolk, so he's able to keep bringing himself back using that whole reincarnation thing. But that's interesting because in, again, Ruiz's future diary, it sort of implied the idea that Pedagoose fought him, because he mentioned the idea that he brought up the man god and it made him angry or something like that. But that could have been the previous time, but I don't think that would be something he would have brought up then. So again, it's kind of interesting that's being brought up again, unless everybody came together, Orsted and Pedagoose, and everybody came together to fight him. I suppose that means Lada is also destined to fight Laplace eventually?
Difficult to say, but there is no doubt that she'll be a big hindrance to the man god.
They could only guess that she'd play a big role in defeating the man god in the future, but nothing was set in stone. Most of the things happening in this loop were completely new to Orsted after all. Yeah, again, that's the assumption there, is that because the man god wanted her gone, it makes sense that she's going to cause something to the man god. Again, this is one of those kind of interesting things about the way that he's wrote this, is that it's like, as the story goes along, it's like it keeps building on certain aspects. Because I think like the earlier moments of Roxy and the man god with him trying to kill her was just this idea of, well, Ruiz produced children that don't get affected by the curse of Orsted. That was all we had to really go by, so they can fight the man god. And now it's kind of slowly building more on it. Oh, now she's she's the savior, and oh yeah, now she's going to defeat Laplace. And yeah, there's a tie-in that could possibly be between the man god and Laplace. There's all these interesting things that kind of slowly over time reveal. I suppose that means that he may try to continue targeting her in the future? Ruiz mumbled to himself. Of course he was concerned, knowing someone might be after his adorable little daughter.
That's precisely why you summon the Sacred Beast. He has a strong destiny himself, so the man god will struggle to interfere with either of them.
Okay then.
Besides, if anything were to happen, I have no intention of leaving your family to die. There is no need for you to worry.
Orsted is so kind. Orsted's such a good boy. Orsted's changed so much. And now yet there is a side of it that's like, yeah, is he just trying to ease Ruiz's mind so he can just do his job and not worry about his family? Or is it, yeah, literally that Ruiz has brought so much to him and Orsted has become so connected to his family that he's like, no, I'm going to take care of your kids. Don't worry about it, man. It's super sweet. Like, if that's the case, it's super sweet. Orsted was doing his best to reassure him, so he could feel at ease for the time being. All Ruiz had to do was continue preparing for the next battle as he had been. Still, he had lingering anxiety about Lada, but simply worrying wouldn't solve anything. Yeah, now we're finally getting into Ruiz worrying about what's going on with Lada. Like, yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Holy crap. Ruiz then went to the university, wondering if Zanoba and Cliff's research was proceeding apace. He had hoped to reduce the magic armor's mana consumption a little more. Currently, only Ruiz could use it. Yeah, we have to have a Julie mecha suit. We're still waiting for the Julie mecha suit. I want a damn Julie mecha suit ever since he brought it up. Still, if they made the mana consumption too economical, the man god's cronies could steal it for themselves. That is technically true. As much as he's kind of focusing on building stuff up and making all these weaponry, this is something that the man god's aware of. So they could technically take it and use it against him, and that would be pretty bad. Assuming Cliff and Elise were working on making a second child, he decided to visit Zanoba first. He's obsessed with them banging. Like, he even has their schedule down. Like, yeah, every morning they go at it, and they probably sleep for the whole night, and then they do it again at night, and then they rest until the morning. Jeez, dude. With Zanoba, he could discuss the magic armor before consulting him about recruiting members from the Mercenary band as store clerks. Afterwards, they could have lunch, and if Cliff had any prototypes, they could go see Orsted afterwards. With this plan in mind, Rudius went to the research building. I knew the moment that he had like this big laundry list that he's putting together before he even gets there, it's like, then you're not going to do any of that. Like, if he's putting together like 2 paragraphs of what he wants to do, he's not going to do any of it. With this plan in mind, Rudius went to the research building, but then a voice boomed out of nowhere. Here we go. Here we go. I'm going to take a quick break before I start this part. Here we go. Moron! You should understand, shouldn't you? Searching for the source, Rudius found a group of 5 men and women standing at the stair landing. You're basically going to your own death. Cliff was grabbing Zanoba by the collar of his shirt and was angrily tearing into him. Elise was behind him, cradling their baby. With a troubled look, Zanoba stared at Cliff with a cold look in his eyes, not budging an inch. Ginger hovering behind him, sending Cliff a weak, pleading look. Julie was at Ginger's feet, staring at Zanoba with watery eyes, as if she would break into tears at any moment. Even for an argument, it seemed odd finding them like this. Zanoba! Cliff! They flinched and turned Rudius' way. Cliff's look was entreating, while Zanoba remained unreadable. No, it went beyond that. It was the first time Zanoba had ever looked at Rudius like he was an insignificant insect. No, it wouldn't be the first time. When I read that, I was like, nope, that probably wouldn't be the first time. Still, he had seen that look before in the past.
Master,
it's good you came,
your
Rudius.
timing is most fortuitous.
Help me convince Zanoba.
I was about to go visit you.
Zanoba pulled a face and somewhat violently pushed Cliff away. While he didn't use his full strength, as a blessed child, it sent Cliff flying onto his ass. Zanoba's expression turned apologetic for a split second, but he didn't even bother verbalizing it. Instead, he made his way to Rudius. I can see that, like, oh crap. Oh yeah. Like, it's got that, like, he's so cold right now, and he's so focused on what he's gonna do, and it's like he's almost changed back to his old self. But he still can't help that, like, crap, I just did something I shouldn't have done. I didn't mean to do that. Zanoba stood taller than Rudius, and his gaze seemed to pierce through him. What happened?
I was hoping to entrust Julie to your care. We may have bought her using my money, but she has always been your slave to begin with.
Julie was crying at this point. His words were the last straw that sent her over the edge. She clenched at the hem of her clothes and lowered her gaze. The tears rolled down her cheeks continuously, and her shoulders trembled. Rudius could catch her whispering something as well. You promised you would listen to my request. Oh, damn. I forgot about that. Oh, that sucks. Again, for those that don't remember, literally last Mushoku Monday, when Zanoba was happy about the fact that she gave him that figurine, he said, I meant what I said. If you want anything, I will give it to you. So it implies here that he read that letter, said, I'm going back home, and Julie immediately said, no, please stay here. Stay with me. Don't leave me. That was her request. You promised you'd listen to my request. Oh, it hurts. It hurts so bad. Oh, man. The poor thing. If Zanoba had another weird misunderstanding, Rudius wouldn't be happy with him. Yeah, we just went through this whole thing with you and Julie. What the hell, dude? So you plan to leave Julie and go where exactly?
Home. I have received a royal command to return. My younger brother, Pax, has successfully wrestled power, killing my father and older brother and taking the crown for himself.
Called that part. Called that part. That was part of my predictions. I mean, it was an easy prediction. Let's be honest. We'll get into the other stuff in a minute. Rudius gaped at him. Pax, the 7th prince that took Lilia captive? Or was he the 6th prince? He managed a coup d'etat and ascended the throne? Wait, that meant that he was king now?
The insurrection left his forces exhausted, and now a foreign power has moved into attack. I was summoned back to help fortify our defenses. Thus, I will be taking my leave for a little while.
No, I know exactly where this is going. The moment I read this, I'm like, the man god is pulling in Zanoba, knowing full damn well Rudius is going to follow him. If you can't get to Rudius, get to the people around him. Now, it's very interesting where it goes in the minute. The next chapter is super interesting in that regard, and that's why I'm kind of happy that I put these 2 chapters together. He spoke as casually as if he was suggesting running to the store for a snack. But Rudius knew, based on what he had told him, he really meant it. The next battle that Rudius kept trying to prepare himself for was already upon him, and far quicker than he anticipated. Now, again, if he's going based on the future diary, again, what his current mind was going to, what he's been talking about for, I think it was just pretty much this entire volume, maybe the previous volume, that he assumed the next one was going to be Cliff. He was going to go after Cliff next. That was going to be the man god's next target. He, based on his own assumptions, I think he even admits that it was his assumptions, that was going to be the next target. again, I didn't understand it. I was hoping that he would eventually explain it, but I think it's just really going the idea that somebody around him is harmed. So that's obviously the next part in the book where somebody in his life gets harmed. So Cliff's going to be next. Millis is going to be next. This is like, this comes out of nowhere. And again, it makes sense based on the next conversation that, yeah, this seems to be something that could have been pushed forward. But yeah, that is volume 18. I got to make sure that's the right volume. Volume 18. That is it for that. That's another beefy boy down. We're getting there. We're eventually going to get to the end of this novel series. No, there's a side of me that's like, I want to keep going and keep going, never ending. We have some side stories too, but anyways, yeah, that's a big oof. And again, expected, since based on the last chapter, that this is obviously going to be something that comes up, and obviously Rudius is not too happy about it. I do love the next. Oh my God, I'm going to keep getting in the next chapter. We'll get in that in a minute. First of all, let's get into tier. Let's get into our tier list. Where does Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation Volume 18 go into? I really need to make a separate list so I know where I'm putting this stuff. I don't know. I haven't heard much positivity around 18, so I don't think this is going to be a very like shocking reveal here. I think this one goes in C. I think this is an easy C for me. And I think 17 did it. I think I put 17 in low B, and I was struggling to put it in C as well, but they had a lot of good stuff in there. But I think 18 is an easy C for me. I would probably say high C, maybe mid C for me. Again, this is based on putting all Mushoku Tensei novels against each other. I'm not saying that it's a C tier for any other novel series. It's just pinning it against other volumes. It would be a C for me. Easily one of the less favorite of the novel series. And that's really around the fact that if I think about it going back, it's like not really much like exciting things happened. This was, again, from the point which Rudius is now working for Orsted. He's going out and doing all these different missions. He's coming home. There is a lot to do with his struggles with being a father and a family member and doing his role in the family and struggling over the fact that he has to keep being out, and whenever he comes back, stuff is happening. But it was mostly around Linnea. And I love Linnea, but it's just kind of random shenanigans and kind of a little bit of a heaviness in there in the idea that she is now being forced to have to pay off this debt. And then Aisha shows up, does some cool stuff with the whole Mercenary band, and then we jump over elsewhere, come back, and then things are happening again. We go to the Beast Folks. Big reveal around Lada, which I did like. I liked the whole stuff around Lada. That was fantastic. And yes, obviously, Julie's reveal. I think Lada stuff and Julie stuff is the big nugget in this volume. That's literally the big twos. If I'm probably forgetting something, but the two bigs are, again, Lada and Julie. So not big enough to keep it really up against a lot of other stuff. So I think it's going to be an easy C for me. So we'll put it there. And again, I'll go back and probably re-debate all this stuff later on once I finish the series. But that's where it's going to go for now. So with that said, let us get into Volume 19. I think this is Volume 19. I have to look at the spine. I want to make sure I don't look at anything else. The spine. I was told not to look at the cover. Volume 19 of Mushoku Tensei. Let's dive into it. Let me move my tabs around. Nope, wrong tab. This goes over here. This goes over here. Chapter 1, Zanoba's Decision. I love this chapter because it finally answers that question of why, Zanoba? Why would you care? And it's so great that it's like, in the end, I'm going with Rudius, really. I think I kind of fall in line with Rudius this entire time. It is, why? Why does he care so much? I'm not going to push against him, but why? It doesn't make sense to me. And again, my mind's always been that Zanoba thinks different. Things just fire off different in his mind. That's what I've always been fascinated about him, is that he shocks you with how much he cares about certain things that you don't think he would care about. And even Rudius himself constantly, over and over again, is saying, I thought all he cared about was figurines, which is, again, sort of a self-confirmation there, is that if you keep thinking that, then obviously that's not the case. But again, getting into his mind and what he thinks about Chiron is important. And when he actually explains it, I was like, wow, that actually makes sense. As much as I hate it, and I have an argument against it. I have a very strong argument against it. It does make sense. And I do kind of hate the fact that Rudius does bring it up, but he doesn't really hit on it properly, I think. But anyways, let's get into it. In Zanoba's lavatory, Rudius, Cliff, and Zanoba were seated at a central table. Ginger, Julie, and Elise with her baby was standing nearby. The mood was heavy. Zanoba's expression solemn, Cliff frowning irritably. Julie's eyes were rimmed with red. Ginger looked distressed, and Elise was at a loss for words, which is very shocking there. Which is so surprising. Elise is usually the one that chills out situations. Like, she's so good at, like, I guess, navigating emotions and what people are going through, that she's able to kind of get people to sort of figure things out. That was like a long thing about her. But I guess this is kind of one of those moments where she doesn't feel like she can really say anything. Like, this is a case where she just does not have, again, she's at a loss for words. She doesn't know what to say. I don't know that Elise is familiar enough with Zanoba, maybe. Well, she should be, because if she's with Cliff all the time and Cliff's always with Zanoba, I don't know. It's weird. It's interesting. Okay, let's all take a deep breath. Zanoba, can you explain again, please? From the very start.
Very well.
Zanoba nodded with a blank and serious face. It was kind of unsettling. Ruiz was used to him grinning whenever he seen him, but now he was like a different person.
A few days ago, I received a letter from the Kingdom of Ch1.
Ruiz had the letter in hand. It had the royal seal of Ch1 and the signature of Pax. Inside, there was 3 sheets of paper. The first contained a description of the coup d'etat that had taken place in Ch1 6 months ago. The 7th Prince, Pax, had returned abruptly from his studies in the King Dragon Realm, with the support of that nation. There is the part that I wasn't really seeing happening, which does technically make sense, because again, he was being sent to the King Dragon Realm as a prisoner. So I guess it makes sense that once he got down there, it looks like the King Dragon Realm supported him. Maybe he convinced them, saying, hey, I have these connections, I can take that place, and then we'll be buddies. And I could totally see that being a political move by the King Dragon Realm to take control of Ch1. Now, I was kind of surprised, because I was expecting when they were going to talk about this force that's attacking them, I thought that would be the King Dragon Realm. They sent Pax up there to, take over, and that would weaken them, and then they can come in and finish them off. But that doesn't seem like that's the case. He wasted no time staging a coup and murdering his father, the king. After slaughtering the rest of the royal family, he took the throne of Ch1 for himself. That was the gist of it, at least. The version in the letter was a lot more long-winded, and it managed to make the whole thing sound almost heroic. The second page described the aftermath. A majority of Ch1's ministers and generals were dismissed following the coup, and many people fled the country in fear. This had left the military dangerously weak. A rival nation to the north was preparing to take advantage of that situation, and Ch1 lacked the manpower to defend its borders. Given the dire circumstances, someone had apparently suggested they summon Zanoba to fight on the front lines. He was a blessed child after all, and they needed any help they can get. The writer went on to argue at length that none of this was Pax's fault, as the purges had been a necessary step towards reform. Somebody was clearly feeling a little defensive. It's not Pax the great hero that took over the kingdom. It's not his fault. He's a great man. He's a magnanimous man. He's a magnanimous man. Is it Silvarl? No. The third page of the letter was a formal order invalidating the old king's command to Zanoba and summoning him back to Ch1. It was stamped with the king's seal, which meant it was an official royal command. Basically, page 1 was the heroic tales of Pax, page 2 was excuses, and page 3 was a draft note. He basically took the throne by force. His army fell apart, and now he wanted someone's help to fight off the incoming enemy. It was shameless, but Ruiz could see where they were coming from. Again, as per usual, Ruiz looks at a situation and says, this is kind of nasty, but I see where they're coming from. That's something I always give Ruiz credit for, is despite seeing something nasty, he at least tries to understand it. Not that he agrees with it, he just understands it. Me personally, I love doing that. I love trying to see what the purpose of something is, despite the fact that I cannot agree with it. Because I think that's a good thing. It's on one hand, it is, if you can understand a mistake, you can prevent yourself from causing it. Or yourself, basically. And on the other hand, it's also to understand how you can dismantle a situation. He wasn't sure how much Zanoba could personally contribute to the war, but he was a famous figure in Ch1. The news of his return would improve morale of the troops. I can see that too. Personally, Ruiz felt the King Dragon Realm should be defending Ch1. That was my immediate thought as well. But again, I was actually thinking that King Dragon Realm was actually the ones that was going to be attacking them. It seems to imply that it's coming from the north. But yes, that is sort of a stretch for them to go all the way up there to defend. But there, again, like Rudius kind of mentions, there could be a lot of politics involved. They're doing this secretly to get, Ch1 in their pocket, but they don't want to get involved publicly because then it could put them at risk of actually being attacked as well. Because they did imply that there's a lot of nations and stuff there that are bordering each other that have, obviously, treaties and agreements. But it also, don't forget, also plays into the whole situation with the Death God. The Death God was being recruited because there was something going to happen. So we're finally seeing, possibly, something involved with all that. But yes, keeping in mind that the whole thing with the Death God, that chapter was Rudius coming through there to go to the north before he got to Ch1. So this is something that was happening before Pax came down. So Pax coming down, so Rudius goes past, Death God gets recruited, Rudius goes to Ch1, that whole stuff happens, Pax immediately gets sent down as they're going by. They could have easily got involved with each other the moment that Pax hit there. Basically the King Dragon Realm was already, I think it was King Dragon Realm, they were already planning something. But maybe there was reasons why they couldn't get directly involved. Every country had its own internal politics. Rudius could see why Pax would need Zanoba. 8 years ago, Zanoba basically ruined Pax's life. If Pax held a grudge, going back to Ch1 would be incredibly dangerous. This letter may very well be a trap meant to lure Zanoba to his death. That said, the real issue here was that Zanoba didn't seem to care about that possibility. So after reading this, you decided to
return to Ch1 and head to the front lines as ordered.
Yeah, Rudius didn't get it. He's like, can you explain this to me? Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Cliff and Ginger had both voiced their opposition already. Rudius hadn't decided either way, but was feeling seriously puzzled. It's like even at this point, Rudius isn't immediately going, no, don't do this. What are you thinking? No, Rudius is like, I haven't really decided. And I think that's really because Rudius sort of, I guess, doesn't want to oppose what people think. Like, if this is what he's decided, I'm not going to say don't immediately, just because immediately I see why. I think Rudius likes to kind of feel it out and figure out what is making Zanoba tick. I can't make a decision right now because obviously Zanoba thinks it's the right choice. So the question is, why does he think it's the right choice? If he was wanting to kill Pax to avenge his father, that would make sense. Staying away from Ch1 for the rest of his life would also make sense. But instead, he was taking these orders seriously. It's like, yeah, I can see him wanting to kill Pax. Yeah, I'm going to go home to kill Pax. Or I want to stay here because, I'm happy here. That makes sense. This doesn't. He's actually going to go to the front lines for Pax. Zanoba knew this might be a trap, and he was walking right into it. Why was he so willing to obey Pax? The man that murdered his father. Cliff then spoke up. I don't see any reason why you need to go. This is a trap, Zanoba. I'm willing to bet he wants you dead. When someone takes power in a coup, they typically wipe out the entire family of the old king. It's the most rational thing to do, honestly. Cliff spoke on experience. He'd come to Renoa because of the power struggle in the holy country of Milis. If his grandfather were overthrown by his rivals within the church, Cliff would be in grave danger himself. When he lost the fight for the throne, your heirs die with you. That was blindly obvious to him. That's a curious thing. I don't really know what their exact structure is there, because typically with the idea of getting rid of the family of the king, it is to prevent anybody that people would back for the throne, and it's typically tied to bloodlines. I don't know, unless they're really strict about bloodlines in the holy country of Milis, I don't know why Cliff would be in danger if his grandfather's overthrown. Now, it makes sense why Cliff left, because they could use Cliff as leverage against his grandfather, but once his grandfather's gone, I don't know why they would care about Cliff. Unless, again, they put a lot of stake into family bloodlines and lineage. And even if Ch1 is invaded, what difference would that make to have you there? You're just one man.
I'll be of some help, I'm sure. I am a blessed child after all.
Fine. Maybe you'll save the day. But what happens then, Zanoba? Cliff shouted, smacking the table irritably. What do you think Pax is going to do once the enemy withdraws? Cliff was informed about what happened between Pax and Zanoba. He was definitely assuming the worst about Pax's motives, but it was hard to blame him. Once you played your role, he could dispose of you anytime he pleases. There was no holes in Cliff's argument. Pax could legitimately need help, but what happens after? Zanoba was a political candidate for the throne. Winning the war would do wonders for his popularity, especially to the soldiers. That's a really good point. The man would become a hero overnight. Wouldn't that seem dangerous to Pax? Again, Pax is like assumed, cowering in his throne going, what do we do? Oh my gosh. My voice for him is going to be so squeaky. Man, Zanoba, welcome back. If we get there. But no, that's an incredibly good point there. Because they've made that point. I mean, Petagoose is a prime example of that. There is a big thing here to do with if a kingdom is in threat, or a world or a region is in threat, the person that steps up, that is the hero. And again, Zanoba is a blessed child. He's going to be out there on the battlefield, just whack, swack, thwack. And everybody's going to be going, holy crap, we can actually do this. We didn't think we were going to do this. Again, it's going to bolster the soldiers. They're going to fight harder because he's on the front lines protecting them. And they were pointing out that was what their goal was a long time ago. When they sent Zanoba out there with his wife, they gave him a location to be because they wanted him in the front line to fight off anybody that comes in. And this is probably the kingdom they're talking about. I don't know if they actually specified the name of the kingdom. I think it was from the conflict zone. But yeah, if he does all this stuff, and when he comes home, everybody's going to be celebrating. Here's the hero. Here's the guy that saved our kingdom from being taken over. Oh, that's right. He's of the family. He's of the bloodline. He's a son of the king that died. Get him on the throne. Get this other guy out of here. He murdered the king. He murdered his brothers. Get him out of here. And when Pax sees that, yeah, he's already killed his father. He's already killed his brothers. What's another one? Even though his brother came there and saved his butt, he's still going to have him killed. No doubt. Unless Pax has changed a bunch. I mean, there's a good possibility that Pax... I mean, they imply in this chapter that he does technically have something in that brain that works. He obviously has something in it that works. That people were spoiling about. Chat. We're going to get back to that tier list where some people were saying, oh, you think that Pax is dumb? No, it was when I was talking about Roxy and stuff and her mindset around her students. You think he's dumb? Question mark? No, he's actually really brilliant. Okay, thank you, chat. I think Cliff is right, Zanoba.
It's quite likely that he is.
Zanoba nodded gravely, so he knew that Pax had a reason to hate him, and knew it was suicidal. That just made the next words that came out of his mouth harder to understand.
However, I am still obligated to go.
But why?
I've received a formal royal order to return.
But that order came from Pax, remember? Do you really need to obey him?
With all due respect, Master, if we ceased to recognize the king's authority every time a new king took the throne, our kingdom would be quite short-lived.
It's not like he formally inherited the throne. The man's basically in a super, right?
Regardless of the means he used to take the power, Pax is now the king of Ch1. That's simply a fact.
It didn't feel that simple. Reus knew that it wasn't unusual for a king to seize a throne violently. It was common enough in his old world too. But were all king's vassals and ministers supposed to merely shrug it off and pretend it didn't happen? To serve a murderer like that? Do you want to work for Pax, Zanoba?
It would not be my personal preference.
Then why are you doing this? Reus asked more sharply than intended. Nothing said got through to Zanoba. At this point, it was starting to get to him. You know he's going to kill you. You don't want to obey him. So why do you have to go? Why do you feel so strongly about this? Reus wondered if Zanoba was worried that ignoring his orders would result in them retaliating. Renault was a long way from Ch1, and they could easily have enough time to figure out a plan. They could even ask Ariel to protect Zanoba.
Well, I'll try explaining.
Zanoba paused for a moment and made a stiff, unnatural attempt at a grin. This is where it kind of hurts because you know that he's like, I think he understands what they're trying to say here, and it's like, okay, I don't know. It's like, it's almost an aspect of like, I don't know if you're going to understand what I'm saying. I don't think that you'll understand where I'm coming from here. And I think Rudius mentions later on that there's an understanding of that.
As you know, Master, I was always something of a burden on the kingdom of Ch1.
That's not true. I mean, you're a blessed child.
A blessed child so incapable of controlling his strength that he murdered a member of the royal family.
It was easy to forget, but Zanoba was nicknamed the Head-Ripping Prince, having accidentally torn off the head of his own half-brother and son of the crowned queen, a terrible sin in Ch1 that he got off scot-free for. It was his mother who had been immediately exiled instead.
I was only pardoned because of my status as a blessed child. They simply believed I could prove useful someday.
Hold on, Cliff said, looking Rudius's way with a disturbed expression. Is this story true, Rudius?
It is indeed, nor was the last of my misdeeds. I later ripped off the head of my own wife, which directly caused a rebellion.
It was true. Zanoba had been married off for political reasons, and his impulsive murder of his bride on the wedding night set off a large-scale insurrection.
The woman said some truly vile things to me, and I felt my actions were justified. Still, I was responsible for the turmoil that ensued. Under normal circumstances, I would have paid for that with my life, and yet I was spared. Tell me, Master, why do you think I wasn't executed on the spot?
Reese didn't want to answer that. They finally revealed that there was a reason for it. It's like it totally left it vague what happened there. It is said that, again, that he was married off for political reasons. Yes, he was married off to this daughter of this family, this very high family, and it was to send him off to this one location out in the boonies, again, to be in the front lines to sort of ward off any incomers. Again, I think it was from the conflict zone. And it just simply said that on their wedding night, he popped off her head. She was found with her head dislocated. Like, it never really got into why he did it. The assumption was there that it was just similar to what happened with his brother. Oh, it's a doll. Oh, it breaks. Darn. Here it's specifically saying, she said vile things to me, so I felt I was justified. You know damn well sure what that vile stuff was. It could have simply been because it was wedding night. It could have simply been that she's like, why don't you do anything with me or whatever? She's like upset that he's not interacting with her. Or it could simply be that, yes, she's jealous of the fact that he's obsessed with the dolls. And she made some comment about the dolls. She insulted his dolls, or insulted a certain figurine. Did she say something about the Roxy figurine? But then that kind of goes in that whole mindset of, again, why did Zanoba not kill Lenny and Priscilla when they destroyed the Roxy figurine? Yes, they had a duel or whatever, and it could be duel's honor or whatever, but it could possibly be that he didn't kill Lenny and Priscilla when they destroyed the Roxy figurine because he had already killed somebody before, and it caused a lot of problems for Ch1. I wonder if he didn't kill them because he didn't want to cause another problem. He felt bad for that he killed that. Again, he says that he's justified, so it's not like he's like, crap, I did something wrong. But what sticks out to him is that he caused all this other stuff, and it seems like he feels bad about it. It's very interesting.
Sometime later, I met you and caused yet another scandalous incident, finally earning myself the punishment of exile. I'd earned my death many times over, but in the end, I was merely banished, and despite all my crimes, I was provided with ample funds to make a new life for myself here in Shariah. Why do you think that is? It's simple, so I could fight for my country when she truly needs me.
That's an interesting point. Here's where it all ties in my mind. Like, now I'm understanding. He says, I messed up. They spared me. I messed up. They spared me. It was all because I was needed. Because they seen some use in me. I did grave things that caused massive problems for that country, and they kept me around. Why? Because of who I was. I was a blessed child that could be useful. And even when I left, indicating here, they were still funding him. I was curious about that. I thought that he was left with like a whole bunch of money or something like that. No, they're still sending him money. They're still supplying him with money. He's still getting money from them. Why? Because he might need to come back. And so he is needed now. I could not have had, there is an argument to be made that I would never have this life if it weren't for the fact that they're still supplying me. Zanoba's tone was so forceful that Rudius couldn't manage a reply. Even Cliff was frozen in his seat, and Ginger wore sadness and resignation on her face. I think Ginger, more so than anybody, understands this, because she is devoted to him. She probably even knew this day would come. She knew why they were sparing him.
It is my duty to protect Ch1 against her enemies. That is the reason I'm alive and was permitted to indulge myself for all these years. I have no choice but to return immediately. You understand? If I were to wait for news of the invasion itself, it would be too late for me to act. For all I know, the fighting has already begun.
Rudius could admit that he was making a coherent case. He owed his country a great deal, and there was nothing crazy about repaying debts. Deep down, maybe Zanoba had been itching to return to Ch1 since hearing of Pax's coup. But there was no undoing those events now. If Zanoba launched his own rebellion, it would leave the country fatally weakened, an easier prey for his enemies. And so, he had to obey Pax instead. It was the only way to save the kingdom. While Rudius understood, it still felt weird hearing it from Zanoba. For so long he knew him, this guy lived in his own little world, indifferent to anything happening outside it. You'd expect him to see all this as none of his business before going back to his figurines. Again, that goes back to that whole idea of he's already indicated that he does think about other stuff. But again, even I was very kind of question marking why he would choose to go. And there is the answer right there. I love how well that was laid out. I was spared, all for this reason. And now they need me. They kind of put that as sort of what was going on in Ch1 when Rudius went through there. Zanoba was this nuclear bomb. He's just sitting in this room and waiting for the moment they need it before they send it out. He literally is almost like something that prevents people from even coming in there. But no, the head-ripping prince is in there. Hell no, I'm not going to. They have a blessed child in that palace. Hell no, I'm not going to go in there. He was literally, again, he was just sitting in there as a bomb. We can use it whenever we want. You want to fight us? We have Zanoba. We have a blessed child. He's like literally impervious to things. They've implied other things, the things that he's impervious to. But again, in the mind of people, this guy is literally a blessed child. He cannot be touched. He is super strong. He even killed a prince. Killed so many soldiers. He's dangerous. This is where, when I'm reading all this, I understand Zanoba. But I still have one argument that I want to bring up. And Rudius brought it up already. But I don't think Rudius brought it up the right way. Okay, what does the letter say? Pax came home, took over, killed his father, killed the other princes, took over the throne. And then, after that, he started getting rid of people and killing other people. And people started fleeing. You can make the argument it's not Ch1 anymore. You can make an argument for you're being spared all those times is no longer there. It's not the Ch1 you grew up in. It is a completely different place. Now, yes, it also depends on how many people are still there. But the key thing is here that every argument that Zanoba has made so far is no longer there. Your father who spared you so many times, no longer there. The people that were providing you with money are no longer there. Everything is no longer there. And again, so many people have fled. All that's left there in power is the one that killed everything. That would be my argument. But again, that goes on the argument, and that's my mindset in the argument of the leadership. Zanoba can see it as a whole. The kingdom of Ch1 spared me so many times. The kingdom of Ch1 gave me money to continue as I have been. And now the kingdom of Ch1 needs me. Which, yes, technically going back to that comment that again was, I think, made when they went to go see Etoff, or went back to the Demon Continent, was simply that he had nostalgia, or at least a desire for his homeland. Not his father, not his brothers, not the money he was receiving, Ch1. So it could probably be very quickly argued from Zanoba, if Rudius even said that. It's still really cool. I like that I can completely understand what he's saying here, even if I don't like it. You'd expect him to see all this as none of his business before going back to his figures. Rudius couldn't tell him this, of course, but he also wanted to tell Zanoba to shrug off the letter and ignore it. But that wasn't what Zanoba needed to do. After a long, painful moment, Rudius finally spoke up. You know they're gonna kill you, right?
If my country tells me to die, then I suppose I'll have to.
Zanoba said that so calmly. Rudius was at a loss for words. His response was stoic and worthy of a samurai. But he needed to stop Zanoba somehow. He didn't want him to die, yet he couldn't bring himself to say that he was making a mistake. Maybe it was because of the calm determination in his eyes. Maybe it was because Rudius had changed his own way of thinking over the years. He just couldn't tell him the whole thing was ridiculous. That's a very interesting kind of point to put there. There's like a selfishness there. I don't want my friend to die, but at the same time, I can't tell him no. I can't tell him he's wrong. And it may be because he just seems so determined. I guess a side of it could just be, I can't deny him in the way that he thinks. I can't deny his determination. I can't deny what he feels so passionate about, I guess.
Come now, Master Cliff. There's no need for you to look so sorrowful.
Zanoba offered them a startling, cheerful grin. It was his usual smile this time.
I must admit, I didn't spend much time thinking about matters of duty back when I was still in Ch1. But then I met you, Master, and you, Cliff, and Miss Nanahoshi. And as I settled into my life here, I began to reconsider my actions. I took time to think what I ought to do.
That didn't make much sense to Rudius. None of them were rabid patriots. It's not patriotism. I don't think that statement is patriotism. He says, but then, I didn't care about my duty. All I was focused on was what I wanted, self-indulging. I don't care about this other stuff. I don't want to be prince. I don't want to be the next king. I don't want to have this. I don't want this. I just want my dolls. Then, I met you, Master, Rudius, and you, Cliff, Grimoire, and yes, Miss Nanahoshi. What do those three things have in common? A purpose. Something to protect. Rudius protects his friends, protects his family. Cliff wants to go home, has a desire for his belief and his grandfather, and he's trying to gain allies to eventually go back and help his grandfather. Miss Nanahoshi, most of all, is working tirelessly to get back home. And again, I think that was what brought up that whole discussion about Ch1 when it came to Zanoba. It was about Nanahoshi wanting to go back home, and Cliff as well. He learned to care about his homeland and care about his home, having purpose outside of his own desires and those around him. He showed them to look around you. They showed Zanoba to look what's standing around you. Look at the people that have made your life what it is. That's why it makes sense to me, and why I think Rudius has it wrong when he thinks about being a patriot. It's not about just serving your country. It's about serving the people around you that made you who you are.
I suppose I'm being rather pretentious about this, aren't I? To be honest, I don't even know why I reached the conclusion that I did. Ha ha.
Rudius couldn't even laugh, as it didn't seem funny to him. He had no right to tell Zanoba how to live his life. At this point, it was impossible to say for sure if he was making a mistake. The decision was his to make, but there was one thing he could say for sure. If Zanoba died because of the choice he made today, it was going to hurt him badly. Zanoba was one of Rudius' very closest friends. It's making me... Rudius grows. Rudius grows. Growing Rudius. Self-growth moment. We knew this is the case. It's just a growth in admitting it to himself. He'd helped him more ways than he could count. Zanoba got him out of a tight spot in Ch1, helped him make friends in the city, helped Cliff warm up to him, held off Etoff with his bare hands. The magic armor would never be completed if it weren't for him. The more Rudius thought about it, the more he realized how much he owed the guy. Freaking love Zanoba, dude. I love Zanoba so much. So true. It's so true. He's such a bro. I freaking love Zanoba. It's the same with Cliff. Me and Chris were talking about this in our podcast that we recorded yesterday. We were talking about Mushoku Tensei towards the later part of it, and it was like, yeah, it's the bros. Cliff and Zanoba are just the bros. They're such good friends, dude. I love it. I don't think I've ever been this attached to a main character's friends, because the male friends of a lot of these shows are just so throwaway. They're usually just reactive. They don't really do much themselves. Cliff and Zanoba mean so much to Rudius. They've done so much for him. It's not even funny. And yeah, I have no doubt whenever it comes to Cliff's situation, Rudius is going to think the same thing. This is what Cliff did for me. I can't lose him. Oof, this guy hurts. That all aside, he also enjoyed his time making figurines with him. It was just fun having him around. Zanoba lavished him with praise at every opportunity and was always gushing about his work. That wasn't bad for his self-esteem. That's a big point too. With Rudius, with how much self-esteem and how much issues he had with his own confidence, having Zanoba there to constantly tell him how amazing he is, yes, it could bloat his head, but it's never really bloated his head. And I think it's never bloated Rudius' head really much because it's always offset by how much Rudius tears into himself. It's an equalizer, basically. Additionally, according to his feature diary, Zanoba stuck with him to the bitter end. He protected his family, staying loyal to death. Rudius couldn't just shrug it off when his friend was marching off to his death. Thinking about the diary, something clicked abruptly into place inside Rudius' head. Zanoba.
Yes, master.
I'm going to. The words came out of his mouth quite smoothly. The mix of joy and anxiety that flashed across Zanoba's face would be one to never forget. Chat, shut up. It's a very ominous statement. I don't like that line. It didn't click. It didn't click last time I read that. I don't like that line. Cut forward 3 volumes. I then remembered the face of Zanoba when he was just full of joy and anxiety before we went off to his death. Stop. 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 Every time Rudius goes off to one of these big battles, it's got to pick somebody and start flagging the hell out of him, like with Ghislaine. Concluding their conference, Rudius headed straight to Orsted to inform him. On his way, he reflected on an odd series of events from a different angle. In the narrative of the feature diary, Zanoba never returned to his homeland. While unsure if he stayed in Shariah his entire life, most of his time was still spent at his side. It all made it seem like Zanoba never received those orders to return home. Maybe Pax failed. Maybe it never happened at all. Either way, events were diverging from those in the diary, and that meant that there was a chance the man god was up to something. I think with the feature diary situation is because Zanoba got involved with Rudius. Again, because in the feature diary, it's going to diverge so much from Orsted's loops, because Rudius was never there before. And now with the feature diary and the current timeline, Rudius has been involved with Zanoba. And all that stuff back with Ch1 got screwed up badly. And as we find out with the predictions from Orsted in a minute, Rudius was already broken at that point that the man god didn't push that to happen. Because as I'll get into a minute, the idea of this could be the man god trying to push you to go back to Ch1 by pushing Pax in that position to cause Zanoba to come down for you to come there. If you're already broken from what happened with Roxy, he never had to do that. This is a new event. And it's interesting that he picks up on that so quickly. Now, my assumption was when I got to this point, thinking back to the feature diary, that didn't click for me because he could have gone down there and did the situation and got back, which he kind of admits here in a minute. They hadn't had all 3 of the man god's disciples in action at once for the last year and a half or so. Maybe Pax was the 3rd. No, it's Geese. I guess it could be Pax if the whole thing with Geese is not happening right now, and he spent that time quietly laying out the groundwork for these events. It seemed possible. Orsted had warned Rudius to be patient, but maybe the time for action had arrived. Yes, this was the moment, and Rudius was going to save Zanoba. So Orsted.
Rudius, is something the matter?
Orsted was at his desk, working on the paperwork. While his face was intimidating, Rudius was too worked up to hesitate. He filled him in on the discrepancy between the current events and the diary. This has to be the man god at work, right?
In the history I'm familiar with, the kingdom of Ch1 collapses following a coup organized by Pax Ch1 approximately 30 years from now.
Did you say 30 years from now?
I did.
In Orsted's flow of history, the teleportation incident never took place, and Rudius wasn't around to mess with the internal politics of Ch1. Under those circumstances, Pax would bide his time, amassing great riches through the slave market. Over the decades, he would attract a group of co-conspirators and cripple his enemies through hostage-taking, before launching a coup against the reigning king. Once he gained the throne, and was free at last to do as he pleased, Pax would begin to question the value of a monarchy itself. In time, he would abolish his own position and establish Ch1 as a republic. That is weird. That is super weird. Why? What? By all indications so far, Pax has been, by what limited perspective we really have of Pax, let's be honest, he's a type that likes power. He basically used his own. It seemed like it was a desire fueled by his desire to find Roxy, but he literally used his own ways and methods to manipulate the internals of the kingdom to gain power. It seemed like his focus was to gain power, but it could be simply an idea that he just gets kind of focused on certain things and then grows bored of other things. So it could be simply that he gained that power finally and realized it wasn't something that he really wanted, and he just shifted into a republic. Because yes, the idea there is that it's pulling away a lot of the power that he has and giving it to a greater group. It's very weird. It's a very weird thing. In the aftermath, Ch1 would rapidly grow into a stronger nation, expanding its territory until it firmly controlled half of the current disputed territory on its borders. This new country, the 4th greatest world power, would eventually produce citizens who would cause the man god many headaches. That's interesting, because of what they're getting into.
I assumed the man god guided you to Ch1 all those years ago because he wanted to drive Pax from its borders, preventing these events from taking place. Once Pax takes the throne, you see, the transition to Republic becomes inevitable.
Yeah, it's very question mark, which makes me wonder why Orsted didn't do something about that immediately. Because again, he was coming through that path when Reese went up there, and then he kept going that direction. And so you assume that he went down to Ch1 or was nearby it and probably heard about the whole situation. Maybe he didn't overhear it. Well, the situation's a bit different. The King Dragon realm is on Pax's side, right? Maybe he won't make Ch1 a republic this time around.
He will. I've meddled in the events in similar ways. But regardless of the circumstances, he always ends up abolishing the monarchy.
They were getting into all that destiny stuff again. Once you got past the point where Pax became king, apparently events would basically arrange themselves so that Ch1 ended up as a republic. Wait. So what happened in the timeline for my diary then?
I would imagine Pax never launched his coup. Ch1 remained a lesser power, as the man god initially desired.
So in the normal timeline, Pax launched a coup and became king. This is all really making me believe that Orsted just died. It's making me super curious about what the hell happened to Orsted in the feature diary. I think I mentioned that at some point, that it really feels like the man god killed him. That whole future that played out just did not have the existence of Orsted. They were all looking for him. Future Rudius was looking for Orsted. Couldn't find him. So it kind of makes me believe that Orsted may have died. What if Orsted is tied to the sacred tree? What if Orsted is the sacred tree? So since Lada died, the sacred tree withered. And that was Orsted. Oh, that's okay. I'm going into some weird theories. Watch it ends up being true in chat. Shut up. So in the normal timeline, Pax launched the coup and became king, then established a republic. Diary timeline, man god's scheming kept Pax off the throne and Ch1 remained a kingdom. Current timeline, Pax launched a coup and we're pretty certain it would end up a republic. But that was odd. The man god had intervened a second time just to reset the status quo? I don't get it. Why would he do that?
It's a trap. It's a trap.
I had to do it.
It's a trap. It's a trap. It's a trap. It's a trap. He wants you dead, Rudius, even if it means returning the history of Ch1 to its proper course.
So he was voluntarily sacrificing one of his victories to to lure Rudius into danger. And I guess, there is a side of that makes me kind of wonder if he's purposely doing that because he thinks that they're going to get off the scent. Well, if I literally undo what I've gained here, then they won't know that it's a trap. But Orsted's seeing right through it, and I would assume that's because he's done it before, and Orsted's used to him doing that kind of stuff.
If you take the bait and show up in Ch1 to investigate, I expect you'll find yourself in the jaws of a carefully laid and lethal trap.
And that comment kind of makes me start to kind of lean towards Geese. Again, Geese is super clever, and I can see him with the Man God putting this trap together, because this is very, very clever. Are you sure he isn't after you instead?
I suppose it's possible, but Zanoba Ch1 is your friend, not mine. He's the bait for this trap, which means you're more likely the target.
Pax had asked Zanoba to return home. Despite obvious danger, Zanoba was insistent to do so. The Man God could not know if Rudius would tag along, but since the risk of Zanoba's life was clear, he probably reckoned it was a good chance. That bastard could be clever sometimes. No, Geese is. Geese is clever, dude. Geese is clever.
What's more, Zanoba played a crucial role in constructing your equipment. Even if you don't take the bait, he may consider disposing of your ally worthwhile in its own right.
Do you see any chance that Zanoba's a disciple?
In this specific case, it seems unlikely. He's a man of no great importance to the future of Ch1.
All right, then. How do you think we should approach this?
The same way we always do. Crush the Man God's scheme with brute force.
Sounds about right. Love it. Love it. Because there was this... Admittedly, there's a side of me that almost thought that based on how this conversation was going, Orsted wouldn't want to get involved. But that is sort of me thinking about the old Orsted. Again, the new Orsted seems to take into mind a lot about what's important to Rudius. But additionally, there is a benefit here to their cause in what Zanoba has put together. Zanoba is an asset to what they're doing. Orsted likes this new setup. He likes these changes. He likes having Rudius as an ally. And he likes this equipment that they're building for Rudius and knows that it's going to be possibly crucial for their future. He's helping him build up a new scenario where he could succeed. And Zanoba is important for that. Not only for Rudius, but for their equipment and their plans. So it's like I had to kick myself. I'm like, yeah, technically that should be what Orsted wants to do. And yes, there's also the important aspect, like he says right there, crush his schemes. Man God's doing something, crush it. That's all that matters. Man God's doing something, something's got to be bad. Crush it. There's nothing that the Man God's doing is going to be for my benefit. So if he's doing something, crush it. With Orsted tagging along, it shouldn't be too difficult to handle. They beat down anyone who came after them, same as they did in Asura. What did it matter if it was a trap? Reese would lure their enemy out, and if it was too much to handle, Orsted would step in and take care of the rest, and make donuts. People began referring to Rudius as a follower of the Dragon God, but in fact, he was basically his fishing lure.
However, there is a chance that he's completely uninvolved with these events.
Could you elaborate?
It's not impossible that these events were always going to happen. The theories I had laid out earlier are essentially pure speculation. That diary does not contain much in the way of details about this period. It's possible Zanoba Ch1 went to his homeland briefly, only to return unscathed.
Again, that's the point. It showed that Rudius was kind of going everywhere during that time, and during those times that Rudius is running around, Zanoba was doing things. Again, it was 30 years later, and that was way later when Rudius was just kind of losing himself and running around. He was looking for a way to get to the Man God.
In that timeline, Zanoba was also a wanted man with a price on his head that might have changed things too. Perhaps Ch1 didn't recall him for fear of angering Millis, or he chose to ignore the summons, or Ginger hid the letter from him.
Yeah, there's like a whole bunch of possibilities that makes perfect sense. That was plausible. The Holy Country had a band of knights that essentially served as mercenaries. He might have feared they would join his enemy in the field. But the Man God did use me to change the course of Ch1's history, right? Why would he just sit back and let Pax end up on the throne for no good reason?
It is possible that Ch1's fate was simply beyond his ability to change. Your destiny is quite strong, but it can't bend everything off course.
Orsted began stroking his chin thoughtfully. What is it, sir?
Pax was exiled in the King Dragon realm, correct?
That's right.
There's a good chance that they were the real power behind this coup.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Rudius realized that Pax spent many years in the King Dragon realm. He might have been goaded into action by someone living there. In other words, there was a chance that he wasn't the disciple they were looking for. The real villain might be hiding in a different country entirely. Very good point. Again, I'm just still stuck on Geese. Again, assuming that whole thing with Geese was like right there and he's been working with Geese this entire time. But yeah, it could very well be somebody in the King Dragon Realm.
Very well. I'll make my way to the King Dragon Realm and see if I can find any evidence of this disciple lurking in its heart.
So, his boss wouldn't be going with him. But there might be a trap waiting for me in Ch1, right?
If you fear that possibility, you should remain here instead.
There's the only part where it makes me believe that it's not so much the earlier statement about we're going to go in there and crush him. It's not that he cares about Zanoba. That's like the counter to it. Because right here, he's like literally going, well, if you fear that, just don't go. Like, it's that simple. If you're upset, then don't go. I'm going to the King Dragon Realm. That's more of a possibility of him being there. So I'm going to go at the heart of it. Oh, you don't want to go there with Zanoba? Well, then don't go. But there's a side of me that thinks he knows that he's going to go anyways. That would mean leaving Zanoba to his fate. Orsted promised to protect his family, but not his friends. He couldn't expect him to prioritize Zanoba's safety above all else. Unless Ruiz could marry him off to one of his sisters. When I read that, I lost it. He's like, oh, but wait. He's not family, but I can make him family. Yeah, I can marry Lilia. Maybe, I don't know, marry Zenith. I don't know, we can marry Aisha, Norn. Lucy. Yeah, just marry off of Lucy. You know, just do the engagement, but don't actually do the wedding ceremony until later. They'll be family, right? Nah, he'd probably treat them right, but let's stay focused. Zanoba would treat them right is not a very odd statement. I think that he would keep them supplied and well fed and supplied with money, but I don't know about treating them. Anyways, moving on. I owe a great deal to Zanoba, and according to that diary, he was loyal to me until the day he died. I can't leave him to die. The problem was whether Rudius could save his life all on his own. He can call in some reinforcements. Edis seemed to know plenty of sword saints. If they wrote to the Sanctum, they might be able to recruit a decent bodyguard. The main issue with that idea is that Rudius shouldn't be telling a bunch of people about the teleportation circles. It was probably premature to try something like that now. Well, yeah. I was going to say that you can use Petagoose, but Petagoose involves circles. Unless they go to Petagoose and say, hey, I got this band of people that are going to help me out down there. I don't want to show them about the teleportations, so can you just take the floating fortress over there and you can drop us off down there? But I don't know. It's a curious question mark because they've never implied any. The question mark is that yes, they're forbidden, but would Petagoose care that people knew that they had teleportation circles? But still, in the end, you're using the teleportation circles through Petagoose, still making you liable for using something that is supposed to be forbidden. So yeah, there's no way around that. Again, unless you drive the floating fortress over there. It was probably premature to try something like that now.
In that case, you head to Ch1, and I'll make my way to the King Dragon Realm. We'll crush the Man God scheme where we find them. Understood?
Yes, sir. There was too much they didn't know right now. They'd have to investigate the best they could during the journey itself.
Ah, yes. I nearly forgot. There's one thing I want you to promise to me before you leave to Ch1.
What's that? Reese thought that he would tell him to swear not to die on him. It was going to make him blush.
Do not kill Pax Ch1, even if you're certain he's a disciple.
What?
Do not kill Pax Ch1.
It made sense. Killing Pax would prevent Ch1 from becoming a republic. All right, I understand. It still made things difficult. Pax might try to kill him. Reese had to keep himself alive and watch out for Zanoba until he can drag him home. That would be tricky. That said, he wasn't sure how he'd get Zanoba to return to Shariah anyways. He wasn't sure what his goal was. Just help his country win the war? Was that enough to satisfy him? For now, Reese was focused on tagging along and keeping him alive. When the moment was right, he convinced him to return to Shariah. In the meantime, they'd also hunt down hints about the Man God's trap and his overall objective. Thank you for your help, Sir Orsted.
No need to thank me.
Reese bowed deeply before leaving the office. It is important that, yes, he makes that point. Don't kill Pax. It's a shocker, but at the same time, it's like you immediately think about it. Yeah, that makes sense because, yes, it's supposed to be important that he makes it a republic, and then all these people that will mess with the Man God will then be born. Without Pax, that can't happen. But it's interesting that he specifically says, even if he is the disciple of the Man God, do not kill him. Even if he's being manipulated by the Man God, do not mess with him. Do not kill him. He's still necessary. I think there is a side of that because the destiny kind of pushes him in the direction that he's going to make that republic, that even the Man God might not be able to manipulate him. But at the end of the day, it is an aspect that we need him to do this. Even if he is a disciple, even if he's being manipulated, he's still supposed to do this. So he still could do it, even still. So yes, if you think about it, it's not a big shocker, but I do agree with Rudius. This makes it very difficult. Because yes, if they get there, and yes, they fight off the things, and again, Zanoba survives, and they go back, again, Pax might want him dead. He's going to literally have to fight off somebody that he can't kill. He's going to have to protect himself, defend himself from lethal attacks without being able to return fire. Literally, you're just going to have to flee the place and hope that he doesn't chase him down. It does make things very difficult. Question mark there is he going to be able to get Zanoba to come back? I think Zanoba is just answering this order, but the sad thing is I don't think it's necessarily what is his goal, just win the war and that'll satisfy him. It's more of I'm going to fill my orders. The reason Zanoba's going back is because he's being ordered to return back and defend them. It can be as simple as Pax saying, I want you to stay here now. That's going to be difficult to get Zanoba to leave. Because then he's going to be ordered, and again, wants to fulfill that as well. He's going to listen to whatever Pax tells him. That's what the problem that Rudius is going to run into going forward, is it's going to be simply that he's going to listen to whatever Pax tells him. He's not going to leave. That's the problem. So, Rudius is walking into the man god's trap. Zanoba hadn't objected much when he told him that he was coming along. But if he knew Rudius' suspicions, that might change his mind. Then again, those suspicions might also convince him. If he knew the man god was using him to kill Rudius, would he reconsider going back home? Rudius gave it a moment's thought, then abandoned the idea. He'd probably end up just going home alone. It would be simpler for the both of them to keep the suspicions to himself. Once again, he would be hiding things from Zanoba. Zanoba had every right to resent him. Yeah, that's a sad thing. Because, yeah, Cliff and Zanoba were really upset when they finally realized that Rudius was keeping the whole thing with Orsted away from them. And again, at some point, he got around to Cliff, having to bring Cliff over there to explain to him that whole situation. But, yeah, he just, this is another kind of thing he's keeping away from. What he said earlier, this guy's my friend. I just care for this guy so much. He's done so much stuff for me, and here I am lying to him again. But it does make sense. If I told him, hey, I think the only reason that you're being called back there is because it's a big plot to kill me. They want me dead. I think Zanoba would be like, well, then stay here, master. I'll go alone. Don't come with me. So keeping it to himself is the simplest way to let's just go in there together. Let's stroll right in there together. So, cool stuff. Anyways. And that is chapter 1 of volume 19. I hope you guys enjoy this Mushoku Monday. Let me see how long I'm going. I think I'm going pretty darn long. Yeah, my recording's going long, but this has been like a really rough recording. I'm super off my game, so this is probably going to be extremely long recording, but probably not a long Mushoku Monday. But either way, I'm glad that I got those two out of the way, and we got right into, again, volume 19. I'm not supposed to look at the covers. I have to keep looking at the spines. As volume 19 of Mushoku Mondays, or Mushoku Tensei, going into chapter 1 of this series. Super excited to see where this goes. Taking care of Zanoba, my bro. Going on a journey back to Ch1, getting things kicked up again. Again, I'll say it again, as much as I like a lot of the character developments and stuff that happens in the slice of life elements of Mushoku Tensei, I personally feel that slice of life-ish type of stuff is not, it's just not, it's not Refusion's strength. Refusion's strength is in drama, character drama, and stress, and all the things the characters are going through, and the adventure, and all that, how that stuff kind of manipulates the story. And yes, the world building and the mechanics, that's where he's good at. Not to say he's terrible at slice of life and all that other stuff, it's just that it's not his strength. So, obviously, I'm super excited to get right back into the whole game, and on to the next plot of the man god, if it's even a plot of the man god. It could just be circumstances. But anyways, great set of chapters. So many good drops. Much more look into Zanoba's mind. And yes, these crazy drops that come out of nowhere about, Laplace and the Sacred Beast and, what the man god might possibly be doing and stuff around Pax, which is kind of surprising. So, interested to see more about this new Pax. Or if he's even there. The question mark is Pax even there? Is Pax even alive? It could just be a false letter that used the seal. We'll see. But anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday. As always, thank you guys so much for dropping by. Hey, chat. Hope you guys had a great Mushoku Monday. Hope you have a great rest of your Monday as well. All that dropped by for the VOD later on, thank you for dropping by. Hope you enjoy this Mushoku Monday. As per usual, greatly appreciate your guys' support, moral support, kind words, sharing out to your friends. All that stuff means a great deal to me. Helps us build and help us grow. Thanks for hitting the like button. If you didn't hit the like button, you're a babaka. And additionally, as usual, greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It's amazing. You guys are just so fantastic. Love the support. It means so much to me. And so, until it's fine. Until the next Mushoku Monday, y'all take care. Damn it. Do like sort of a jump through the volumes. Water. Sir Orsted. Oh, almost did Zanoba's voice. Persenna's work consisted of assisting Lilia.